What happens when the most feared alien queen in the galaxy captures a human and then falls in love with him? What happens when that forbidden love leads to a child, something thought biologically impossible? You're about to witness the story that shook two empires to their core, where survival, love, and evolution collide in the cold heart of an alien winter. Stay tuned, because if you click away now, you'll miss the first spark of a war and the birth of a legend. The shuttle screamed through the sky like a dying star, its hull glowing red-hot against the frozen clouds. Commander Will Watson gritted his teeth as he fought the manual controls. Warning lights blinked across his display, each one telling the same story. Systems failing, engines dying, nowhere to land. The snow-covered planet below rushed up too fast. The cold winds howled outside, battering the shuttle like an angry god. With a final jerk of the yoke, he managed to level the ship just before impact. The crash was brutal. Silence followed. Will hung upside down in his seat, blood trickling down his forehead. The front glass was cracked, but still held. He groaned, undid the harness, and dropped to what used to be the ceiling. The air was freezing. His breath fogged instantly. He took quick stock: food rations, emergency kit, his powered armor, all mostly intact. He had maybe 3 days of power left. Stepping into the snow was like walking into a freezer full of knives. The wind cut deep. The snow came to his knees and the air smelled strange. Alien. He pulled his helmet on and began walking north, where his scanner showed a rock formation that might offer shelter. Something moved in the distance. Will froze. A flash of orange disappeared behind strange tree-like structures. He raised his pulse rifle, heart pounding, but saw nothing. His training kicked in. Keep calm, keep moving, eyes open. 2 kilometers later, she appeared. She stood like a statue carved from fire. 8 feet tall, skin like sunset, hair that moved like molten metal. Her armor shimmered, orange and scaled, almost organic. And her weapon, a strange spear that hummed with energy, pointed directly at his chest. "Whoa," Will said, raising his hands but keeping his weapon low. "You don't suppose we could talk about this?" Her golden eyes narrowed. Her voice was deep, smooth, and sharp as a blade. "You are either very brave or very foolish to enter the territory of the Solarians." "Let's go with brave," he said, flashing a grin. "Commander Will Watson at your service, and you are?" "I am Queen Aurelia, ruler of this land, and you are my prisoner." "Well, I usually prefer dinner first," he said, not lowering his hands. "But I'm open-minded." She didn't laugh, but something in her eyes flickered. Curiosity, maybe. The wind howled harder. Will noticed her shiver, just slightly. Even a warrior like her was not immune to the storm. "This weather's turning nasty," he said. "Maybe we could argue somewhere warmer." "You dare to suggest I shelter a human?" "I suggest we both avoid freezing to death. That's not a human problem, it's a life problem." After a long pause, she finally lowered her weapon. "Follow me. Try anything and you'll not live to regret it." Charming. They walked through the snow in silence, her movements smooth and powerful. Will's suit tracked her vitals. Strange, intense heat radiated from her body. Her physiology was fascinating. As they neared a cliff, she pressed her hand to the rock. A hidden door opened, revealing a passage into warmth and safety. "You're not what I expected," she said, her tone unreadable. "Oh, what were you expecting?" "Weakness, simplicity, arrogance. I'm only arrogant when I know I'm right," he said, stepping through the doorway. The door shut behind them just as a distant explosion rocked the mountain. Without thinking, Will tackled her forward, shielding her body with his armor as chunks of ice collapsed behind them. When they stopped rolling, she was beneath him, her golden eyes wide, breath coming fast. "You saved me. You looked like you wanted to live." A moment passed. Then she pushed him off and stood. "You're still my prisoner. And you're still fascinating." In the emergency lighting of the outpost, Will saw her differently. Less warrior, more woman. He saw the tension in her shoulders, the flicker of doubt in her eyes. They were trapped, Enemies, alone, and something between them had just started to change. Queen Aurelia moved like a shadow across the dim corridor, tall and fluid, every step filled with control. Will followed at a respectful distance, noting how her armor curved and flexed with her body, almost like it was alive. The outpost's heating system kicked in with a low hum, casting a gentle warmth that fogged the edges of his cracked visor. He took it off. "Temperature's stable," he said, trying to ease the tension in the silence. "Guess I won't freeze to death, at least not right away." Aurelia glanced back at him. "You speak as though death is always circling you." "It kind of is," he replied, grinning. "But you get used to it, comes with the job." She didn't answer but kept walking. They entered a command chamber lit by emergency strips. Alien symbols glowed faintly on the walls. A central table displayed a 3D projection of the landscape. Hills, canyons, storm fronts moving like ghosts across the terrain. Will leaned against the console, casually. "So, what happens now?" "You interrogate. Me? Torture me? Ask me to betray my species?" Aurelia didn't laugh, but the edge of her lips twitched. "You flatter yourself human, I have no use for your secrets." "Then why keep me alive?" She turned to face him fully. Her eyes locked onto his, not with hostility, but curiosity. "Because you're different. You don't flinch. You don't beg. You smile. Well, you're beautiful. I smile when I see beautiful things." That caught her off guard. For a split second, the indomitable queen blinked. "You dare? To compliment you? Yes, I'm very bold." A long pause passed between them. Then, slowly, she moved to the table and gestured to a section of the map. "There is a human outpost south of here, 2 days by foot in this storm. Your people have built more than we realized." Will nodded, pushing off the console. "Let me guess, you were planning to invade?" "We were considering options." "Right. Options meaning conquer, control, crush." Her gaze sharpened. "And what do you call it when humans spread across the stars like wildfire?" "Survival," he said simply. "Because we have nowhere else to go." She didn't answer right away. Instead, she touched a control panel. The lights brightened. Her armor peeled away from her neck and shoulders, revealing skin that shimmered like firelight. Will tried not to stare, but failed. "I suppose," she said, turning away to hide her expression. "Your kind calls this charm." Charm, luck, and sheer refusal to die. That's kind of our thing. She looked back at him, something unspoken simmering beneath her regal mask. "You're not what I was trained to expect." "Well, I hope that's a good thing." They stood in silence for a moment. The storm howled louder beyond the walls. Then, almost hesitantly, she spoke again. "When I was young, they showed us images of humans. Small, weak, greedy. They told us we were superior in every way, that you were little more than talking animals lucky to breathe our air." Will raised an eyebrow. "Charming educational system. And yet," she continued, stepping closer, "here you are, crashed on our planet, alone, surrounded. And instead of groveling, you insult me, joke with me, you flirt. Well, in my defense, you're kind of hot for an 8-foot alien queen." She blinked again, this time unmistakably amused. "You do realize I could kill you with one hand?" Will grinned. "But you won't." "And why is that?" "Because you're curious," he said softly. "And maybe a little lonely." That hit deeper than he expected. Her face shifted, still proud, still unreadable, but softer. "You presume much, Commander Watson?" "I do. It's part of my charm." She turned away, but not before he caught the faintest smile ghost across her lips. She moved to a side panel and activated what looked like a resting chamber. Soft bedding, faint light, heat. She paused at the doorway, silhouetted in gold and fire. "You will sleep there. I will remain here." Will nodded. "Understood. Queen's orders." He walked past her, and as he did, he felt her eyes on him. Not hostile, not judgmental, just watching. Before entering the chamber, he stopped. "For what it's worth," he said over his shoulder. "You're not what I expected either." The door slid shut behind him. Alone, Aurelia stood in the dim light, staring at the spot he had stood. The warmth of his presence lingered in the air. She reached up and touched her own cheek, confused by the heat there. For years she had trained to see humans as obstacles, as lesser, as threats, but that man, he made her laugh, think, question, and worst of all, he made her feel. For the first time in her life, Queen Aurelia wondered what it would be like to not be alone. Outside, the storm raged. But inside the outpost, a quiet fire had started to burn. The storm did not ease. It howled like a wounded beast outside the outpost, shaking the walls and drowning out the world. But inside, something quieter and far more dangerous had begun. Will didn't sleep much. The bed was warm, the air comfortable, and the room designed for rest, but his mind wouldn't stop racing. Not from fear. No, it was something stranger. Something that had started the moment he looked into her golden eyes. The alien queen who should have killed him by now. Instead, she had let him live. Not just live, but talk, eat, joke, breathe the same air. He was supposed to be her enemy. But the way she had looked at him, that hesitation in her voice, the moment of vulnerability when she shivered in the cold, it haunted him. When he finally drifted off, his dreams were vivid. Flames and snow, gold eyes and laughter, and something else, something he couldn't explain. He woke with a jolt. The outpost was still quiet, but his suit had triggered a soft alarm. Biological scan, anomalous readings detected. Will frowned, rolled out of bed, and pulled his suit toward him. The data was strange. It showed spikes in radiation, but organic, not environmental, coming from the other room. He moved silently down the corridor. Queen Aurelia was standing in front of a mirror, her back to him. Her long, copper-colored hair was unbound, falling like liquid metal down her shoulders. Her armor had partially opened, exposing part of her upper back, glowing. Her skin, soft orange like the sunset, was pulsing gently, as if lit from within. Will cleared his throat, not wanting to startle her. She turned quickly, armor sliding, back into place. "You should be asleep." "Yeah," he said, not stepping forward. "So should you." Their eyes locked. "I couldn't rest," she admitted. "Too much noise in my mind." "I think I know what you mean." She tilted her head. "Do you?" "My suit just picked up something strange. Radiation, but not harmful. Something alive. Something changing." Aurelia went still. She looked at her hands, then pressed one palm to her lower stomach. "I felt it too." "Felt what?" "Warmth, a pull, and dreams. Human memories that aren't mine. A child running through green fields, laughter, water, stars." Will's breath caught. "Wait, are you saying—" "I don't know," she said quickly. "It shouldn't be possible." He stepped forward, slowly, carefully. "My suit scanned your vitals while we were out in the snow. Standard safety protocol, you were healthy, but now your body's changing. You think I'm sick?" "I think—" He hesitated. "I think you're pregnant." She didn't move, didn't breathe. "No," she whispered. "We are not compatible. Your DNA is too fragile. Ours too advanced. The science says a lot of things until it's proven wrong." She backed up until she was against the console. "You don't understand. If this is true, it's an abomination. My people will never accept it." Will stepped closer, his voice low and steady. "Then they're going to have to learn." Aurelia looked up, her face hard but her eyes afraid. "If they find out, they'll destroy me. They'll take the Child, study it, kill it. Not while I'm breathing. You can't protect me, not against the Empire, not against Pyrax. Will's jaw tightened. Then I'll protect what matters most. You. And that child. There was silence between them. Heavy. Charged. The kind of silence that meant things would never be the same again. You would fight an empire for something that shouldn't exist? She asked quietly. I would fight 1,000 empires for something that does. Aurelia blinked fast. You're not like the others. Will smiled gently. You keep saying that. She sat down slowly, as if the weight of her own body suddenly felt too much. Everything I've believed and everything I've been taught, it's crumbling. He sat beside her. Not close, but not far either. Maybe that's a good thing. You don't understand what this means. My people built their identity on purity, strength, order. They see emotion as weakness, interbreeding as betrayal. Then maybe your people need a new story. She looked at him, and for the first time, Will saw true fear behind those fierce eyes. I'm scared. He reached out slowly and placed his gloved hand over hers. So am I. She didn't pull away. Later, they sat together in silence, watching the storm through the reinforced window. The snow no longer felt threatening. The cold no longer seemed so cruel. Something was changing. Inside her. Between them. Outside, the wind still screamed across the alien landscape. But in that small shelter, a spark had been lit. Something no science could explain, no culture could forbid. Hope. And it was growing. The storm broke by morning, but the tension inside the outpost had only grown thicker. Queen Aurelia stood at the command console, her hand resting lightly on her abdomen. She didn't say it, aloud, not yet, not even to herself. But she felt it, something alive inside her. It shouldn't have been possible, and yet the truth whispered through every cell of her body. Life. New life, born from a union that defied every law of her empire. Will watched her from across the room, pretending to study the structural reports, but he wasn't fooling anyone. He saw the way her hand lingered there, the subtle panic in her usually unshakable posture, the way she avoided his gaze. You haven't said anything, he said finally. Aurelia didn't look up. There is nothing to say. You're glowing, he said gently. Literally. My species absorbs environmental radiation as energy. It's not unusual. Except, he added, stepping closer, you've never glowed like that before. And now every time you come near me, my suit throws warnings like I've stepped into a nuclear reactor. She turned sharply to face him, eyes burning. Then perhaps you should leave. He met her fire with calm. Say it. Out loud. She clenched her jaw. It isn't real. It can't be. But it is. Aurelia's composure cracked. She stepped back, pacing. If the council learns of this, if Pyrax suspects, I won't just lose my throne. I'll be executed, the child dissected. You hunted across the stars. Will crossed his arms. And you still think I should leave? I'm trying to save your life. He stepped forward. And I'm trying to be part of it. Their eyes locked. The air between them sizzled, tense and uncertain. Outside, the wind had stilled, but the silence felt louder than any storm. A sharp beep shattered the moment. Will turned toward the panel, his suit already sinking with the outpost's failing systems. We've got movement. Aurelia was already moving. Show me. The display flickered, revealing 3 incoming ships cutting through the atmosphere. Sleek, fast Solarians. Royal Guard class. Aurelia's breath caught. They found me. Will's voice turned grim. What are the odds they're here for a friendly chat? They'll be under Pyrax's orders. He's been pushing for power, arguing I've grown weak. This is his chance to take the throne. You think he knows? She shook her head. Not yet, but he'll suspect something the moment he sees you. Will didn't hesitate. Then I'm leaving. Aurelia grabbed his wrist before he could turn. You can't go out there alone. The storm may have calmed, but the terrain, I've survived worse. No, you don't understand, she said, gripping his arm tighter. If they catch you, they won't ask questions. They'll kill you just for being here. Then help me disappear. She hesitated, her hand slipping into a compartment beneath the console. She pulled out a glowing shard, a data crystal, warm to the touch, pulsing in time with her skin. This will guide you, she said, pressing it into his hand. It's encoded to my DNA. You'll be able to track my signal and feel if anything happens to me. Will stared at the crystal. Feel? Our bond, she said softly. It's stronger than I thought. He pocketed the crystal carefully. You're not going to disappear on me, are you? No, she said. But I need time. Time to face my people. To protect what we've created. Then I'll give you time. But I want something in return. Her brow arched. A demand? Now? He stepped closer. Close enough to touch her, but not daring to. Promise me this isn't goodbye. She stared at him for a long moment. Then, without speaking, she pulled him down into a fierce, sudden kiss. One that spoke of anger, fear, passion, and something deeper she couldn't yet name. When they parted, her voice was hoarse. This is not goodbye. Will turned, heading toward the rear maintenance tunnel. He activated his stealth protocols and looked back one last time. Aurelia stood tall, already slipping into the mask of a queen again, her face unreadable. Except for her eyes. They still watched him. Minutes after he vanished into the tunnel, the main entrance to the outpost exploded inward. 3 tall figures entered, Solarian warriors in shimmering red armor, their weapons raised, their movements precise. My queen, the lead soldier said, bowing. Are you injured? I'm fine, she said coolly. You took long enough. We were delayed by the storm. I assume you brought medics? The soldier looked confused. Are you hurt? No, she replied, lifting her chin. But I may soon be indisposed. The guards exchanged glances. Outside, Will climbed the snowy ridge, the crystal pulsing, faintly against his chest. Every step away from the outpost felt wrong, like tearing muscle from bone. But he knew she was right. He couldn't help her by staying. Not yet. His suit's long-range scanners pinged faintly. A human signal, a settlement, 2 days south. He set his course and started moving. Behind him, deep in the heart of the mountain, Aurelia stood in the ruins of the command center, her armor glinting in the artificial light. Her hand returned to her stomach. The child was real. The bond was real. And what came next would shake the galaxy. As the sun finally broke through the clouds above the alien peaks, neither human nor queen looked back, because the path forward had already begun, and nothing would stop what had been set into motion. Will Watson trudged through snow that reached up to his knees, the winds roaring like ancient ghosts across the alien landscape. His visor was crusted with ice, his power reserves were running low, and still he pushed forward. Each step hurt, but he barely noticed, because against his chest, the crystal pulsed. It was warm, alive, a heartbeat not his own. No, 2 heartbeats. Hers and the child's. Every time it glowed stronger, it filled him with a strange certainty. She was still alive, still fighting, still holding on. He reached the ridge just as night began to fall and spotted the lights of New Darwin, his people's settlement tucked in the crook of the valley below. Relief flooded through him, until he zoomed in with his visor. Something was wrong. Towers had been reinforced. Troop transports moved in formation. Defense batteries were being installed along the perimeter. The colony wasn't just surviving. It was preparing for war. Will made his way down, limbs shaking from cold and fatigue. Before he even reached the outer gates, a dozen soldiers in powered armor surrounded him, rifles aimed, sensors scanning. Stand down, he called through his helmet, raising his hands. Commander William Watson, ESS, Hyperion, serial number 476AZ9. A familiar voice barked through the comms. "You were listed KIA 3 days ago." Will turned to see her, Colonel Sarah Hayes, armor half unstrapped, eyes sharp as ever. She didn't smile. "Not yet." "You look like hell," she said. "You should see the other guy." This time her lips twitched upward. "Bring him in." Inside the command tent, Hayes debriefed him over hot synthetic coffee and enough heat to thaw his fingers. Around them, displays showed troop movements, Solarian fleet locations, and a spreading red mark labeled Queen Missing. "So, you went down in Solarian territory," Hayes began, arms crossed. "You're alone, and you survived." Will nodded. "More or less. You were spotted leaving a collapsed outpost. Bioscans say you're carrying something that matches no known tech." He hesitated, then reached into his chest pocket and placed the glowing crystal on the table. Hayes leaned in. "What is that?" "She gave it to me." Hayes blinked. "She?" Will looked her in the eye. "Queen Aurelia." The room went completely silent. "You're telling me," she said slowly, "that the missing queen of the Solarians, enemy to every colony in this sector, saved your life, gave you alien tech, and let you walk away?" Will didn't flinch. "She did more than that." Hayes stared at him like he'd grown another head. "You're serious?" "I didn't plan it, Sarah. We crashed, survived a storm together, and look, I don't even fully understand it. But it's real." Hayes sat back. "This is why Pyrax is mobilizing. Half the Solarians think their queen's been corrupted. The other half are quietly siding with her. You just walked into the center of a civil war." "Good," Will said, "because that means we have a chance." Before she could respond, the base alarms blared. A tech shouted from the corner. "Unidentified Solarians entering orbit matching Royal Guard configuration." Will shot to his feet. Hayes narrowed her eyes. "Your friend wouldn't have followed you here, would she?" "No," Will said, heart pounding. "Not unless." The comm screen crackled to life, and then she appeared. Queen Aurelia, regal, towering, alive. Her image flickered but held strong. She wore full ceremonial armor, her copper hair braided, her golden eyes unblinking as they stared into the room of stunned humans. "I am Queen Aurelia of the Solarian Empire," she said. "I seek asylum on human territory." Gasps filled the command room. Officers scrambled to cross-check the transmission. Some drew weapons, others prayed. Will smiled. "Looks like she missed me." Hayes wasn't smiling. "We're going to get bombed out of orbit." But before the humans could respond, the feed split, and another figure appeared beside her. High Commander Pyrax, clad in obsidian armor, eyes full of fire. "How convenient," he sneered, "to find our lost queen in the arms of vermin." Aurelia didn't blink. "Careful, Pyrax. You speak to the father of my child." The room froze. "Say that again," Hayes said slowly. Will grinned. "She just did." Pyrax's face twisted in fury. "You dare insult our empire with this mockery? You defile our bloodline?" "No," Aurelia replied coolly. "I evolve it." More gasps. Across both fleets, sensors picked up dozens of Solarian ships arriving, half bearing Aurelia's sigil, the rest Pyrax's. Hayes turned to Will. "What the hell did you do?" Will folded his arms. "Apparently, I started a revolution." On screen, Pyrax roared, "This ends now! The queen, the child, the traitor human, they will all be cleansed." Aurelia turned to Will's image. "Commander, will you fight beside me?" "Always," Will replied. Then the transmission cut out. Above New Darwin, the sky began to burn. Dozens of Solarian ships opened fire, not on the colony but on each other. Solarians loyal to Pyrax clashed with those who had sworn allegiance to Aurelia. Human forces scrambled to their defense lines, torn between protecting their colony and understanding who their allies even were. Will stood on the front line as plasma fire lit up the clouds. Hayes joined him, rifle in hand. "This is insane." He looked skyward. Yeah, but maybe that's what change looks like. The HFY battle had begun, not just for survival or territory, but for the future of two species, and the child that could unite them. And Will wasn't about to let that future slip away. The skies above New Darwin boiled with fire and fury. Solarians and humans alike looked up to witness history written in plasma trails and energy bursts. Two fleets, once united under a single banner, now tore each other apart. Aurelia's rebels fought to protect their queen, while Pyrax's purists launched strike after merciless strike, determined to erase her from existence. In the middle of it all, Commander Will Watson stood at the edge of the colony's command platform, his eyes locked on the rising chaos. Every second, ships exploded in distant flashes. The air shimmered with electromagnetic interference. His comms kept crackling, but one signal came through clearly, steady, rhythmic, alive. The crystal against his chest pulsed. Aurelia was still up there, and so was their child. "She's broadcasting again," a technician called from the console behind him. "On screen," Will ordered. Aurelia's face appeared, sweat beaded, breathing hard and visibly straining to maintain her composure. Her golden eyes flicked past the camera as alarms blared in the background. Behind her, medical drones hovered. Lights flickered. Sparks rained from the ceiling. But even now, she looked like a queen. "Will," she said, her voice just slightly uneven. "It's begun." Will's heart dropped. "Now, in the middle of a space battle?" She nodded slowly, one hand pressing to her stomach. "The child is coming, and it's not like any birth we know." Before he could respond, the lights behind her flared white-hot, energy pulsing across every wall of the ship's medbay. "My God," a medic whispered from the background. "It's rewriting our systems, just by existing." Will stared at the screen, his voice soft. "Aurelia, you need to get out of there." "I can't," she said. "If I leave this ship, Pyrax wins. My forces will lose heart. I have to see this through." "You don't have to do it alone." Another explosion rocked the station above. Will turned to Hayes. "Get me up there." She stared at him like he was mad. "What?" "No, that's a war zone. She's giving birth to the first human Solarian hybrid in the middle of a civil war, on a flagship that's being torn apart while half her species wants her dead." "Yeah, I'm going." Hayes folded her arms. "Even if I say no, I know you'll try." "Exactly." She sighed. "Fine. There's one route, crazy and suicidal, a stealth pod with deep core launch capability. It wasn't built for atmospheric entry, but it might survive long enough to breach her hull. Send it." Minutes later, Will stood inside, the tiny drop pod checking his suit's connections one last time. The pulsing of the crystal had grown more intense, stronger, like it was calling to him, like he was needed. As the pod sealed around him, he exhaled and whispered, "I'm coming." Then the launch hit. It felt like being fired from a cannon. Gravity tore at his insides. Heat blazed around the pod. He closed his eyes and held on. Aurelia cried out in pain, gripping the side of the medical table as another surge of energy swept through her body. Her vision blurred, her mind barely holding together. She could feel the child's power now, raw, unfiltered, spreading into the ship's very systems. "This isn't natural," one medic said in awe. It's changing us. The engines are recalibrating. Our targeting AI is gaining new protocols without code." "She's not a weapon," Aurelia hissed. "She's a bridge." Just then, the ceiling above her cracked open. Smoke, flame, and then a figure dropped down through the breach. Will landed hard, rolled, then popped up in full armor, pulse rifle raised. "Nice of you to crash the party," Aurelia murmured, tears in her eyes. "You look radiant," he said, even as alarms blared around them. She laughed through a wince. "Only you would flirt during an interstellar birth." "You said you wanted a partner," he said, moving beside her, taking her hand. "I'm here for both of you." She gripped him tightly. "I'm scared, Will." "So am I," he admitted. but I've seen impossible things before. And I fell in love. With one. Her golden eyes met his. Then the lights turned blue. The baby was coming. Energy exploded from her core, flooding the room. Monitors shorted. Machinery restructured mid-function. Even the floor hummed with life. Technicians dropped to their knees in awe. And yet, above it all, came a single voice. Stand down. Pyrax. His hologram appeared beside the birthing chamber, intercepted from another ship. This ends now, he growled. Surrender the child, or we tear your flagship apart. Will stepped forward. You're not taking her, or the baby. Pyrax sneered. You are an infection, a mistake. This union must be erased. Aurelia sat up despite the pain, fury in her voice. This union will outlive you. But Pyrax had one last card to play. Then watch your mistake cost lives. Outside, his fleet charged weapons, targeting the human colony. On New Darwin, Hayes watched in horror as the Solarian weapons locked onto the planet. Command, we've got incoming. Multiple energy signatures. Colonel, a young tech shouted. We're not going to make it, but then, every screen flickered, every gun shut down, every ship froze. Back on the flagship, the child was born. A pulse of energy surged from her tiny body, pure, brilliant, infinite. The light swept across systems, disabling weapons, scrambling war codes, melting centuries of fear and division into a single moment of stillness. In Will's arms, the newborn opened her eyes, glowing blue and gold, just like the stars. Aurelia, exhausted but alive, looked up at her daughter. She stopped the war, she whispered. No, Will said, kissing her forehead. She changed it. The ship's systems lit up with new data, new energy, new potential. Across the galaxy, sensors recalibrated. Biology was rewritten, boundaries shattered, not through war, through birth, through unity, through her. And in that quiet, miraculous moment, human and Solarian hearts beat as one. The newborn's first cry wasn't a sound. It was a wave, a pulse of energy so pure, so unprecedented, it stretched beyond the flagship, beyond the battlefield, and into space itself. Across orbit, engines quieted, weapons powered down, AI cores flickered with strange readings. Even war-hardened Solarian commanders stopped barking orders and simply listened. On New Darwin, Colonel Sarah Hayes stared at the silent enemy display in disbelief. What the hell just happened? Her comms officer turned slowly, headset sliding down his neck. Ma'am, all the Solarian ships have gone dark. Their weapons are offline. We didn't fire. We didn't do anything. Hayes looked up at the sky, where flashes of war had vanished in a blink. Something did. Back aboard the Imperial Dawn, the medbay was silent except for the soft, rhythmic hum of the child's breathing. Will held her gently, wrapped in a thermal wrap, her tiny golden eyes open and aware, far too aware for a newborn. Aurelia, still weak but recovering, reached out to stroke the baby's cheek. Her fingers trembled. She did that, didn't she? Will nodded, stunned. She stopped a war, before she could even walk. The medics, speechless, knelt beside them. Their monitors were dead, their scanners confused. None of their technology could understand what had just been born. She is more than both of us, Aurelia whispered. More than human, more than Solarian. She's hope, Will said quietly. Suddenly, the comms crackled. A channel opened. Pyrax's face filled the screen, but he was no longer sneering. His armor was scorched, his expression shaken. I demand an explanation, he rasped. Will stepped forward, the baby in his arms. You wanted to cleanse what you feared, he said, but what you fear is your future. Pyrax's eyes fell on the child. He faltered. That's impossible. No, Aurelia said from her bed, voice hardening into royal steel. She is evolution. She is the bridge, and you, Pyrax, are the relic. You defied the High Council, he growled, betrayed your blood. And in doing so, she said, rising, slowly despite the pain, I saved it. Aurelia's hair flowed like molten copper, her body trembling but upright. Every inch of her radiated strength, not from tradition, not from fear, but from truth. A truth even Pyrax could no longer deny. I will not kneel, he muttered. You already have, she replied. Behind him, ships began transmitting surrender protocols. One by one, commanders who had once sworn allegiance to Pyrax began to switch allegiances, not because they had lost, but because they had seen the child. The proof, the future. 3 weeks later, the Great Unity Summit was held aboard the Imperial Dawn, now retrofitted with combined human and Solarian technologies. The once stark, angular corridors of the ship now shimmered with integrated energy fields, soft lights, and shared iconography. 2 emblems joined by a single starburst. The Grand Chamber had standing room only. Diplomats, scientists, warriors, even former rebels stood side by side. There were whispers, of course, fears, doubts, hidden resentment, but they came anyway, because she had been born, and that changed everything. Will adjusted the unfamiliar ceremonial uniform. It was half Earth Fleet officer, half Solarian court, garb, and entirely uncomfortable. Need help with that collar again? Aurelia asked as she stepped beside him, her own outfit a magnificent blend of her queenly regalia and human elements. Sleek, flexible, practical. I'll manage, he grumbled. No, you won't. She stepped closer and fixed the clasp, her touch softer than the silk lining. He smiled. You look terrifyingly elegant, he said. She tilted her head, amused. You look like a human trying not to sweat. Rory, named Aurora Dawn, giggled in Will's arms, her chubby little fingers glowing faintly with bioluminescence. Already she had shown impossible abilities, floating objects, speaking in echoing bursts of both human and Solarian tones, and, once accidentally rebooting a defense system by sneezing, she was, as Hayes once said, cuter than she had any right to be, and 10 times more dangerous. Do you think they'll accept this? Will asked quietly. Aurelia touched her daughter's forehead. They will have no choice. Change is here. She is change. Inside the chamber, the audience hushed as the two stepped onto the central platform. Lights dimmed. The walls displayed a living hologram. Images of both species, moments of war, and now, moments of peace, of cooperation, of laughter. Aurelia raised her voice, firm and melodic. Once, I believed we were destined to conquer, that only through purity could we remain strong. But I was wrong. Her voice did not tremble. Every syllable carried weight. It took a human to teach me that unity is not weakness, that emotion is not surrender, that love can be the strongest weapon of all. A ripple passed through the crowd. Will stepped forward, his voice relaxed, but clear. We didn't plan this, we didn't expect it, and we sure as hell didn't understand it, but we chose it. He looked at Rory, cradled in his arm. And now it's up to all of us to build a galaxy where they, can live without fear. Where the next generation won't see enemies when they look at each other, but possibility. Scattered applause began. Then more. Then a wave. Solarians and humans rising to their feet. A chorus of acceptance. Imperfect, yes, but real. Behind them, Pyrax stood silently at the edge of the hall. Not in chains, not in command. Watching. He had not spoken since the battle. But his presence meant something. Even relics could learn. Later, as stars drifted by outside the observation deck, Will stood alone with his daughter, watching the galaxy spin slowly beyond the glass. I don't know if we're ready for you, he whispered to her, but we're going to try. Tiny golden eyes blinked up at him and her hand reached for the stars outside. Behind him, Aurelia joined them. She'll be a queen one day, she said softly. Will smirked. Queen of what? Aurelia smiled, a real smile. Whatever she chooses. He nodded slowly, wrapping his arm around her waist as they stood together, human, alien, and hybrid child, at the beginning of a new era, because the impossible had happened. And it wasn't the end, it was just the beginning. The end.